Hello, BookTube. All right, we're in this long, endless baton death march of a Q&A for 6,700 Q&A. And I'm going to try and wrap it up in this video. This always happens. I start out with the best of intentions and a song in my heart thinking I'm going to get through all these questions in one video, and it ends up taking 4 videos. 4 videos is how long these things take. I should just get used to that. But let's see. We stopped with Pints and Paperbacks, and I went on a long rant. Every one of these is punctuated by an ending rant. Pints and Paperbacks asked about traditional agents and traditional publishing. And it's yet another question that tempts me to do regular AuthorTube videos. Maybe 1 video a week. Maybe that wouldn't be too much. To do a writing and publishing related video once a week, because this is all great stuff, and it doesn't fit in with my normal book related content. So anyway, let's see. Kojo Jojo is next, and Kojo Jojo asks, well, who do you think has read the biggest amount of books? Out of the people you know, or famous people, it doesn't matter, just give some examples. It is impossible to know exactly how much someone has read in number of distinct works, but I like to hear opinions related to this subject, especially by a well-informed reader like you. I read a lot. I would be in the running for that competition. Also, the late Harold Bloom, the late George Steiner would have been in the running for that. I know a couple of people. I know that one of them in particular, I know she would not want me to mention her name on this channel, but she reads a vast amount. She does literally nothing else. And all the way back in time, right? In the Northern Renaissance, the Dutch humanist Erasmus read a vast amount, spent most of his day doing that. And there have been similar people all along. The question is, can you balance the massive amount of reading with anything like a normal, balanced life? So the kind of people who have read more books than anybody else are weird creatures that you would not want to know. I'm talking about people who still have friends, still have a kind of social life, still have an engagement with the outside world. And of those people, you know, the names come up: Harold Bloom, Samuel Johnson, Virginia Woolf, a number of other people. I know a few people working in the literary world in New York who read a vast amount, just vast. And yours truly. Let's see here. Michael Moore asks, your English lurker pops up to ask if you think there's a possibility of more ancient documents, Roman or Greek, being discovered in, say, some archaeological dig or an overlooked cave or burial site. There's always that possibility, yeah. I think the more likely candidate for giving us any kind of work from the ancient world will be new methods of reading what already exists, like the charred, mummified remains of libraries at places like Pompeii and Herculaneum. Is there a way for you to use laser technology to read those blocks of brick? Something like that might have more likelihood, but you never know. You never know. All it takes is one Roman spice merchant who was in Arabia Felix and was robbed, maybe, and maybe the bandits who robbed him noticed that he had an entire box of scrolls, and they knew that the scrolls had no resale value, but maybe they'd been raised in a literary culture and venerated them, didn't want to destroy them or burn them or wipe their anatomies with them, and decided to bury them instead. That's all it takes. All it takes is 1 or 2 of those, and our ancient world literature could expand enormously. Oh God, I dream about such things. Let's see here. Tyler Curtis says, as someone who has read a lot about Christianity, what do you think about universalism? Do you think it's scripturally and theologically sound or a heresy? Well, that's Tyler Curtis's first question, and of course the Roman Catholic in me says, of course it's a heresy, but nevertheless, once upon a time I knew a Unitarian Universalist, and learned a lot about what it is, and my thought about it is I don't understand why people adhere to it. Why not just go the one tiny extra step and be an atheist? Why not just do that? And then Tyler also asks, are there certain kinds of books easier to write reviews of than others? Yes. Yes. For a number of different reasons. Oh, yes. Yes. Because the question boils down to what a review is. Again, another instance where I'm tempted to do a regular AuthorTube feature on this channel. It boils down to what a review is. What are you doing? If, for instance, you're writing for a venue that a very short word count and they mainly want you to summarize the book and talk about its strengths and weaknesses, then by far the hardest thing to do, if that is your brief, is a long and complex novel. because that is the hardest amount of front-ended work on your part. You have a huge amount of work to do before you get to the writing part. Whereas, if you have a similarly limited word count on, for instance, a new book on the Salem witch trials, incumbent on any author of any book like that is going to be a lot of exposition, a lot of catching the reader up. And that allows the reviewer to coast a little. You can see how the writer is handling the material in those sections without hunkering down with them. You can save your hunkering down energy for when the author starts to make new or interesting interpretations and review accordingly. And also, it also reflects back on something that came up in an earlier, I think the last segment of this endless Q&A, is also what is the editorial ethos that you're working under? Are you writing for your own self, or on a very lax editorial scripture, or are you writing with an editor with a heavy hand over your prose, so that you're not free to do things in exactly the way that you would like to do them? Then that becomes harder. Absolutely. The minute you start kowtowing to someone else's style, a house style or a personal style, that makes things much harder. I know that's a tiny glance at the question. I could go on for hours on this particular subject. And let's see here. Isaiah Armstrong asks, would you put Ray Bradbury in the top 10 science fiction authors? Yes, I would. Top 10, sure. Maybe not top 3, but top 10. PHX SNS1 asks, what do you think of underground comics, particularly figures like Robert Crumb or Harvey Pekar? I've never liked them, obviously. I mean, if you think about it, my taste in these sorts of things is very lowbrow. I like superhero comics. So a comic that's you know, where the characters are intentionally ugly and intentionally, you know, gnomish, and where there's a weird kind of politically motivated in-joke humor that runs throughout the whole thing, I tend not to get it. I tend just to feel like an outsider. So I recognize, you know, that they have rabid fans and that they have craft, but they're not for me. Then, in your opinion, which major book award, the Pulitzers, National Book Award, NBCC, that's the National Book Critics Circle, the Booker, etc., has the best track record when it comes to picking worthy titles? It varies. All of them have horrible eggs in their past. We shall see with the Booker. We shall see what they do with Hilary Mantel. We shall see. Actually, a few major book awards have lots and lots of disaster to clean up in the next award season. So it's always you know, a thing that's in progress. There's no one that I swear by more than any other. Once upon a time it was the National Book Critics Circle, but their last few seasons have been so full of tokenism and virtue signaling that I'm starting to think that mind frame has infiltrated their judging board. So once that happens, once you start paying attention to the skin color, the sexual identity, the reproductive organs, the socioeconomic background of the people who write the books as opposed to the books, once you start paying attention to that, it's so hard to root that back out and get your system back online that I tend to just give up hope. And so it ends up being scattershot. Any of these major awards can pick a good book, but there's none that I look to anymore. Except the greatest such award of all, which is the year-end Steve Reed's Roundup. My own roundup of the best and worst books of that calendar year. The only one that is completely reliable year after year after year. Let's see here. John Petter says, could you recommend some books about the so-called decline of the American Empire, if that's the right word? I've never understood what that means, so no, I don't. I know a bunch of books on the subject, but they all strike me, most of them strike me as just garbage. So and mainly because, for conceptual reasons, I don't understand what the whole concept means. So I have no recommendations on the subject. And John Petter also says, please do a best 2010 to 2019 video. I've seen a couple of those videos on BookTube where people talk about the best books of the whole decade. It's a lot of work. But I should probably do it, shouldn't I? James Holder says, are the lower shelves of the bookcases around your bed empty? Yes, they are, but only the lower shelf. Just one bottom shelf of each. My bed is on the floor. It's a pre-World War I metal box spring, and it's on the floor. I don't have any space under it. I was thinking about that when I was putting bookcases all the way around this book room. I was thinking, what will you lose? Won't the mattress block shelf? And I thought, yeah, it'll block the bottom shelf of 2 bookcases. So I'll be losing 2 shelves, but by bringing those bookcases in, I'll be gaining 10 shelves. And I'll just be losing the bottom 2. And even the bottom 2 are not a total loss. You can stuff socks and clothing down there and get them off the floor. and it'll be just fine. You can just reach in a hand for those. So, and didn't you have another question? What is your favorite Miss Marple novel? That would be Nemesis. Then Music Bookaholic says, why is Washington State the best place to live? I'm assuming this is some sort of post-apocalyptic hypothetical. Washington State would be the best place to live if literally every other place in the world were gone. That's the only way I can think of to answer that question. More Sasquatches than people. And, oh my God, with the last question. Fantastic. Ray Tostado says, have you received an advance copy of The Cabinet, George Washington and the Creation of an American Institution? Will you do an in-depth review of the book? I might point out that you would know that I'd received an advance copy of The Cabinet if you followed every one of my videos. And now I realize that you do not. But I got the book and I also read it. I thought it was quite good. It's one of a distressing trend in 2020, so in the early 2020 so far, of a couple of George Washington books that weren't terrible. That's alarming. I have a whole rant set up about bad George Washington books. I don't want to be hoisted out of it now. But anyway, I will do a review of it. I don't know where, but I will definitely review it. It's worth your time. If that's what you're wondering, when it comes out, you should definitely reserve it at your library or get it at the bookstore, because it's very interesting. Could have been 3 times as long. And there you go. Lord Almighty. There you go. That was our 6.7K Q&A. And we're going to do another Q&A at 7K. So we'll do another one of these in what one commenter said is going to happen soon. So get your questions ready. Oh my God. In the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.